welcome to Jim Fallon Video Tutorials Quick Tips Series. Today we're going to learn how to insert into a SQL view. To get started, we're going to use an easy example. I'm creating a simple table called Person with the columns Person ID, First Name, and Last Name. We're going to make the Person ID field the surrogate primary key. So now we can run our SQL. And we have our table created. Let's refresh the table node. And we can see that our person table exists. And as we can see, our person table is empty. All right, just to keep this simple, I'm going to add a view for our single table. It might not make a lot of sense to put a view on a single table, but there are circumstances where it could be useful, such as if you wanted to hide a table in another schema, make it accessible only through a view. I doubt you'll use a single table view often, but for our first example, it'll be a lot easier. Okay, so we've created our view. Let's refresh our view node. And we can see it's there. And we can also see that it represents our person table. All right, now we can create our first trigger on our view. As a quick tip, I don't want to discuss every type of trigger, but I will go over a couple options to keep you from being confused if you're not that familiar with triggers. The type of trigger we're going to use is a DML trigger, which stands for Data Modification Language. If you've written or seen trigger examples, this is the most common type of trigger you'll write. You can write a DML trigger on an insert, update, or delete. You can also set when the trigger is fired. It can be an after trigger or an instead of trigger. With the after trigger, the rows are already altered for you. By using a special table called inserted, you have access to the rows that were just inserted into the table. Or in the case of a delete, you also have a deleted special table. After triggers are a lot more common than instead of triggers, primarily because you have to do a lot more work on an instead of trigger, so there's a lot more room for errors. The instead of trigger does not alter the rows. It is entirely up to you to handle the job. A view does not insert into the table, so we can't use an after trigger. To insert into a view, we have to use an instead of trigger, and it's required. So as you can see in the code here, we've manually inserted into our person table using an insert. And then you can see also that we have our inserted special table where we get that data from. So we're taking all the rows from the inserted table and then we're going to insert it right into the person table. So let's go ahead and create our trigger. Now when we insert into the view, it should update the underlying person table. And we just inserted into our person view. As you can see down here, we've got 2 rows affected. That's because one is counted as when we actually insert into the view itself, and then one is the data going into the table, just how they show it. So now to see if it worked, we'll do a quick select from our person view, and we can see that we've inserted George Washington into our person view. However, the view doesn't actually store the data. So now we can see we get the same results when we go to person. So now we've seen that we can insert into a view that represents our person table. User information is commonly used in a program, so it's often a good idea to have a view that shows us the tables joined together. We'll make a simple view that joins the 2 tables into a view. For our select statement, you can see we're just going to do a simple inner join, and we're going to combine all the fields of both of the tables. So we'll turn our select statement into a view called user to person. We just created our view, so let's go ahead and refresh our view node, and we can see user to person there. All right, we can see that that represents the fields of both of our tables. You might wonder, we just added George Washington. Why isn't he in this view? Because George Washington is not a user. George Washington is just a person in our table. We did an inner join, which is going to exclude anybody that's not in both tables. Let's go ahead and create our insert trigger on our new view. Remember that we have a foreign key on person ID in our user table that references the person ID identity column from our person table. That makes things a little bit tricky because now we need to insert into the person table first and then use that ID to insert into our user table so that our new user can reference the person record. I'm going to do that by using a merge statement or merge into. If you're not familiar with a merge statement, then just use my code. This is a quick tip tutorial, so I'm not going to go into great detail about how the merge works, but just copy the code from the website and use it for your own purposes. Just alter the table names and columns and whatever you need to in order to fit your needs. Let's go ahead and execute our statement and create our trigger. Now we can test our trigger by doing a quick insert statement. And as you can see, we're inserting the username, passphrase, first name, and last name, which is a combination of all the fields in both of our tables, with the exception of person ID, which is going to be automatically generated by our person table. You can also see down below, we see 3 separate rows affected. What that is we have one insert that went into our view. From our view, we inserted one into the person table and one into the user table. So we get a total of 3. Now we need to make sure that it worked. And there we have it. You can see that we have a view representing the data that we just inserted in, which is a combination of both tables. And there you have it. You've just successfully inserted into a SQL view. Thank you for joining me in another video tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. All the code for this project is available at my website, www.jimfallon.com. That's F-A-L-L-I-N. There you'll find all of my video tutorials in blog format, complete with all source code. Please don't forget to like my video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. This is a new channel and I would love to know what you have to say. Please let me know if there's something you really like or areas that I can improve to help make these videos as valuable as possible to the development community. Thanks again, enjoy coding, and I hope you'll join me for more video tutorials just like this one.